In the rugged, windswept mountains of Corsica, a boy was born who would one day shake the very foundations of the earth. Napoleon Bonaparte was an outsider from the start, a thin, quiet boy with a thick accent who was teased by his peers, yet he possessed a mind that worked like a master architect of war. While others played, young Napoleon studied the great conquerors of the past, devouring maps and history books until the battlefield became his second language. When the fires of the French Revolution began to consume Paris, the old world of kings and queens turned to ash, and in that chaos, Napoleon saw his path to glory. He rose through the ranks with lightning speed, proving his genius at the siege of Toulon, where his cannons crushed a superior British fleet and made the world finally take notice of the name, Bonaparte. But France was a nation in turmoil, and it needed a savior. Napoleon famously cleared the streets of Paris with a whiff of grapeshot, saving the government and cementing his status as a national hero. Given command of a starving, ragged army in Italy, he achieved the impossible. He didn't just fight his enemies, he embarrassed them. He moved with a speed that defied logic, striking like a cobra before the Austrian generals could even finish their morning coffee. He was a master of the divide and conquer strategy, turning a desperate mob into the most feared fighting machine in Europe. Seeking to follow in the footsteps of Alexander the Great, he led his troops to the deserts of Egypt, standing before the Great Pyramids and telling his men that 40 centuries of history were looking down upon them. Upon his return to France, Napoleon seized absolute power in a bold coup, declaring himself first consul and eventually crowning himself emperor in the heart of Notre Dame. In an act of pure defiance, he took the crown from the hands of the Pope and placed it on his own head, signaling to the world that he owed his power to no one but himself. His greatest masterpiece came at the Battle of Austerlitz, where he lured the combined might of the Russian and Austrian empires into a deadly trap, shattering them in a single afternoon under a cold December sun. For a decade, Napoleon was invincible, redrawing the map of Europe and placing his brothers on the thrones of ancient nations. He brought order to a lawless land through the Napoleonic Code, creating a system of justice that still influences the world today. However, the shadow of ambition is long and dark. Napoleon's obsession with crushing Great Britain led him into the Spanish Ulcer, a brutal guerrilla war that drained his gold and his men. But his greatest mistake lay in the vast, empty plains of the East. In 1812, he marched into Russia with 600,000 men, the largest army the world had ever seen.
It is finished.
The Russians retreated, burning their own cities and leaving nothing for the French to eat. When Napoleon finally reached Moscow, he found a city of ghosts and flames. The Great Retreat that followed remains one of history's greatest tragedies. The Russian winter became a deadlier enemy than any army, freezing his empire to death as soldiers struggled through blizzards and starvation. Of the grand army that marched in, only a small fraction returned. His enemies saw their chance and united against the wounded lion. Forced to abdicate, Napoleon was exiled to the tiny island of Elba, but his story was far from over. In a legendary escape, the Eagle returned to France, and soldiers sent to arrest him instead fell at his feet in tears of joy. For 100 days, he reigned once more, leading to the final, mud-soaked showdown at Waterloo.
Snipers could be anywhere.
Against the Duke of Wellington and the arrival of the Prussians, Napoleon's dream finally died in the smoke and chaos of the battlefield. Exiled again to the remote island of St. Helena, he spent his final years in silence, looking out at the Atlantic Ocean. Napoleon Bonaparte died at 51, but he left behind a legacy that proved a common man could become a legend. He remains the ultimate symbol of what sheer will and human intellect can achieve when fueled by a dream of greatness.